We just get right to it. Hi, Rob Wergin.
Hi.
Okay. I'm so nervous for this podcast. I really am. All day I've been having so much internal jabber. And then I sort of figured out why. Number one, you're like one of my favorite human being. Well, call you a human being is really one of my favorite. And so I'm so worried because I'm like bringing you into my community. I keep this part a little under wraps. And I said that to you a while ago because I did this video of your amazingness and I wasn't going to do it. And I was like, what are people going to think? But then I'm like, to thine own self be true. So anyway, welcome. Thank you so much. So great to see you. I love you with all of my heart and my soul and my aura and everything in between.
You're so sweet.
No, and we both know I'm not sweet, right?
Well, we can all be that way sometimes.
I'm accurate, but not sweet. So, I mean, who are you? What's up? There's your dog. Hi, Merlin.
That was my daughter and my dog.
Your daughter and your dog.
Yep, they're going out for
my dog has been at Rob Wergin Healing since the day I got him. I got him on December 4th. We were in an intensive, and he comes to every intensive since.
I know they love it.
They do.
So, yep.
So, like, what's the deal? Who are you?
I'm just a 74-year-old guy that got really lucky 20 years ago.
Yeah, you can change your life your life can change at any minute. That's for sure.
That's what I love to say that to people because I was like 54, and I was at the stage where I thought I was going into retirement or thinking about retiring, all of that. And I was going to live in Montecito or Santa Barbara. I was going to live in Aspen or both. I had lots of money. Everything was wonderful, I thought. And then it wasn't. Then I had no money, and so, and then I got to do this job. So it was all a huge gift.
Yeah, and then the longer-ish version of the story is that when you were really young, you kind of knew you had these innate healing gifts.
I did. I mean, I always, I look back and I think about it, and how your memory is. It may or may not be totally accurate, but as I remember, I just thought that's what we did. I thought that's what people did, because my parents were so, religious, and they taught us to pray, and if I found an animal that was hurt, I would just say a little prayer to God, and it would get better. And I'm like, okay.
That's what happens when all birds fall on the ground.
Yeah, that's what was supposed to happen. So I'm like, what's the big deal? Well, my mother especially thought I was possessed, and which is interesting. I mean, it's hindsight's so wonderful, isn't it? But
yeah,
they took me to the church and did a Lutheran form of exorcism on me when I was 7 years old.
Wow.
And it scarred me I was in therapy for a long time because of that, mostly because I didn't understand. I mean, I didn't understand because I was helping animals, and how could that be bad? I mean, that was more of my issue with the therapist. Was I don't understand.
Right.
But now I understand because my parents gave me the opportunity to have a human life filled with fun and frolic. So I would know what a human life filled with fun and frolic would be like, right? With all the stuff. I mean, I've been married a few times and bankrupt at least once, and had all kinds of threatening diseases.
Did I ever tell you this? I just always think you're like the Jimmy Buffett of healers.
Yeah. That's
like you're just singing a Jimmy Buffett song right here.
I'm a pirate.
You're just like a pirate looking at 40. Because when I first met you, I mean, I don't even know if you know this. I was at Omega doing something, and you were in the big room, and I was like, oh, what a fun evening activity. I mean, this is my idea of fun, y'all. Like, oh, divine energy healing for evening activity. I was like, oh, count me in. And I was so impacted by it and got so sick the next day, which in healing is just the greatest thing that can happen. It means you're expressing out everything.
Exactly.
And and then I just knew you were my guy. And then I just signed up for something next and next. And, as I do, nothing if I'm not loyal, I'll follow you around everywhere. But I remember you saying that. You're like, yeah, I guess you were probably like 69 at the time or 70. You're like, yeah, I just thought I was going to be like on a beach, like drinking margaritas. And here I am, like traveling around the world, putting my hands on people. So what was the second? So then you lived this big life, you're a CEO and all this other stuff. And then what happened in the next transition? 3 lives in one, Rob Wergin.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I went from that to 3.5 years of downward spiral. Starting to, I never was an alcoholic. I never was an addict. I was able to start and stop whenever I wanted to, but
Good for you.
but I also,
I mean, I don't have the exact story, but anyway.
So, I mean, I pushed the boundaries of everything because I was, I had a lot of money. I was planning to retire, and then all of a sudden, I didn't have any money. It got stolen from me, and when you're a 50-year-old guy and you worked your whole life to have all this money so you could retire in Santa Barbara and Aspen, that's not bad.
Yeah.
And then have it taken from you, it's pretty hard on anybody's ego, and especially mine, because I couldn't forgive myself because I hadn't set trust up for my kids. I hadn't done anything like that. And so all this money disappeared and nobody in my family got any benefit of it.
Wow.
And so that was hard. It was hard for a 50-year-old guy to, so I drank a lot of Stoli and took some pain pills and took a few jobs when I needed some money, and then decided I'd had enough and was going to end my life on February 22nd, 2003. And that's when this all came back around.
It's like when life began. It's just so interesting, right? The presents wrapped in shit, right? Sometimes the presents are just wrapped in shit.
Exactly. And again, as I look back at my life, I see all these indicators. I call them billboards. I'm driving down 80 miles an hour in my brand new Porsche, with a gold watch on, and all these billboards are flashing at me like, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me. And I'm not paying attention because I'm too busy going to my next deal, right? So,
Right.
but it's all perfect. I wouldn't change a thing. I actually work harder now than I've ever worked.
You're the hardest working man in show business. Let's be honest.
I mean, it's 7 days a week.
And like endless emails. It actually stresses me out. It stresses me out. But I know God's got you with anybody.
I got this.
The other thing on an aside is that I know you don't sleep that much. So anytime you sleep 2 hours a night, right?
2 to 3.
Yeah. So anytime I don't sleep well, I think, well, Rob Wergin slept for 3 hours last night. Maybe you'll make it through the day. This is literally, that is like one of my coping skills. I'm like, Rob Wergin didn't sleep last night either. So
yeah, I've been up since 2.
Well, good.
I went to bed around 11.
Good evening.
Since 2. Yeah. Long night.
Good morning. So you went to the beach to try to kill yourself, and then what happened? So we got to get to the good stuff,
Well, yeah. I mean, what happened was that either in my drug state or my spiritual state or whatever state I was in, I started having a conversation with a being I'll just call God, for lack of better. And in that moment, I would have told you I was an atheist and I didn't believe in anything. And then here I am 5 seconds later talking to God, or who I think is God, who's telling me to remember what I did as a child, and I would have the opportunity to do it with adults. And it was my choice. I could choose to do that or choose to continue down the path of going bye-bye.
Wow.
And, people say, wow, you must have been brave. And I'm like, I don't say brave. I took a shot. I took a shot at trying something else. And I had no idea. I had absolutely no memory of my childhood at that moment. Zero, because I had shut it all down. And so I'm like, oh, okay, I'll take a shot. But what did I do as a kid? It's like, and they're like, well, you were used to heal animals. And I'm like, what?
Wow, you didn't even remember that.
I had no remembrance for a while. I mean, it was a while. And then I said, so how do I do this? And they said, get in your car and go to Sedona. And I said, well, I don't have any money. I don't want to go to Sedona. And what am I going to do when I get there? And they just said, go. And, I thought my intellectual mind actually did me a favor for once. I thought that because I had asked God, the backup before that, Molly, is I had said to God, if you have anything to say to me, you better say it now. I was like threatening God.
Sure. That's all of my prayers are that. All of my prayers are like, you better, I hate
Yeah,
you. Come on.
yeah.
What the F? Oh yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and
like
so
literally my
that
prayer
was
life.
me. That was kind of me. I had my fist up. I was screaming into the sky, and I'm like, if you have any effing thing to say to me, you blah blah blah, say it now. And that's when they said go to Sedona, and I'm like, so. Then I thought, it was the drugs or the whatever, and there's all this back and forth. I wasn't sure who was lying to who, or whatever. But so I just said, you know what? If I said, God, if you have something to say to me, and something said something to me, maybe I should check it out.
I love that.
Because
But
I've always
also,
I've always been kind of an adventurer anyway. I'm like always pushing the envelope. So I'm like, I'll just check this out. And so I literally got in my car and drove over to Sedona, like I was told.
well, there's nothing like a rock bottom to get you to do brave things too,
Well,
right? Like,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And
and here
actually,
we are.
yeah, here we are. 19 years later, 300,000 healing sessions later. I mean, yikes.
Well, it's also amazing. I mean, listen, that's what I say to people all the time about you, because I run with a lot of civilians who are not so into, how much time I sit and spend in my spiritual practice. And I say, I have literally watched this man cure Parkinson's disease on stage. I've seen it happen. I've watched him have my friend in a wheelchair. I mean, I've watched so many things. It's beyond measure, and then had beautiful things happen for me. So this is the question I ask at the end of the podcast, but you and me, we have the same love language.
Yep.
Just get into it.
Yep.
Just get to business. We had to tell the story quickly, but that's blah. So what are we really craving? That's the first question. That's the last question, but for you, it's the first question.
What are we really craving?
Yeah, what are we craving?
I think we're all just craving peace and tranquility. I mean,
Right.
it just would be so nice, wouldn't it, to wake up in the morning and just go, wow.
Yeah.
That's it. Instead of all this checklist of stuff that we're worried about that day, or that we hear about that day, or the new next thing that's coming. I mean, this new Omicron virus that's really bad. I mean, there's always something on the horizon coming in. I think it would be so nice just to wake up and go,
What a beautiful day.
what a beautiful day, and my life is perfect, and I am grateful.
I feel like that is how you wake up.
No.
A lot of scrubbing. Me too. It's a lot of scrubbing. A lot of scrubbing that goes on in the morning.
I'm no different than you are, love.
I know. That's why I love you so much.
I'm still human. And I think that possibility of that peace is it's possible. I absolutely believe that what we're going through right now is the world's greatest purge, and I like to liken it to like a caterpillar, going through chrysalis and then becoming a butterfly. That we're kind of in that dissolving our old self stage, and that's why we're talking about creation, so we can create a new stage. The challenge is that there's so much other stuff happening that it feels like we're under attack all the time, and it's really important that we just know and trust and believe that we're okay, and that we're actually the core of this new energy that's going to be expanding. And it's not like a threat or anything. It's going to happen whether we want it to or not.
Well, that's the truth.
But we might as well just be on the right side of the light, the way I look at it.
Yeah. So. I mean, in my life, my experience with you, I think of you as a healer, but I also think of you as a teacher. And I'm curious about both of those roles that at least you've played in my life. And let me tell you something, I've brought plenty of people into the fold who have had powerful beyond measure experiences with you. I mean, but when I think about the stuff that you've taught me, I mean, it is so much about like, a belief is something, a belief is a repeated thought, and there's a way that we can choose to believe. And I'm just curious about, because you correct language a lot. It's a big thing. I watch you when people are explaining to you what's wrong with them. You really shut them down quickly when they start to talk about their illness too much. Can you talk me through some of that? I think it's really good formal advice for people who are listening, who would be like, I don't know if I want to go to you, but maybe they do after you tell them this stuff.
Well, I mean, the way I look at it is we have a trillion, I don't know how many trillion cells we have in our body, but our cells are our cells and nobody else's. So they listen to what we say, they listen to what we think. We are constantly programming these cells, and the cells are changing. There's some coming, there's some going, but we're constantly reinforcing what we don't want with these cells that are like little soldiers that love us unconditionally, and they'll do whatever we say. So we end up doing stuff that we don't want to say, and we end up creating that.
Can you give an example of like what people say and then maybe where it's going wrong? Like when you deal with so many people.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest example, I think, is with cancer, because that's the all-time greatest fear people have, right? I mean, the last thing you want to hear is that. And I've worked with tens of I don't know how many thousand people with cancer, and I've seen a clear difference between those who make a decision that they're going to go along with whatever their diagnosis was, and they will end up going along just click, 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 right on schedule down the rabbit hole. And then there's the same person, a different person has the same diagnosis that says, you know what, I don't want to end my life that way. And they don't. And they may both go get chemo, they may both get radiation, and if you could watch them simultaneously, one is deteriorating and one is healing. And it's all about the belief, because I mean, one of my favorite authors is Bruce Lipton, who wrote The Biology of Belief, where he used to isolate cells and subject them to different energies, and they would become the energy he subjected them to.
Wow.
And it's been proven. See, what I like is that people say, I don't believe in the spiritual shit. Well, the truth is, Bruce Lipton stuff has been proven scientifically. So forget the spiritual part for a second. Scientifically, this is what happens, whether you're spiritual or not. So it's your choice. Do you want to die a slow, horrible death, or do you want to get better and have an amazing life? And 99% of it is this.
Right, is our mind. So what you're saying is that there are some people who get a cancer diagnosis and they say, it's done, right? And then they say, I'll do whatever the doctor says, and there's just a fear in it. Is that what I'm hearing?
And we've been programmed to do, and I'm not putting doctors down, but we've been programmed to do what the doctor tells us to do. Yeah. And the doctor is doing what they've been trained to do, so they're not doing anything wrong, and they always tend to give you the worst case scenario, so because if they don't, they could be sued. So there's all these other factors in there. And so you can accept their diagnosis and follow their path, which is usually not a good path, or you can not accept their diagnosis and create your own path. It's that simple.
Yeah.
But it's not that simple, because then you have all the family and friends pressure, and you're on Googling and you're going to these support groups, and all they're talking about is how you're going to die and all these things. And you just have to be tough enough to say, no, this is my body. I'm in charge of my body. I get to do what I want to with my body. And you know what? If you guys don't like it, that's okay.
So how would you make that? I mean, how would you make that into a positive? Somebody said, like, I mean, I love your line, which I say all the time to so many patients is, that's your opinion. That's an opinion. That's an opinion. You're telling me I have but so is that like what do you do then? So you get this diagnosis and you say, okay, that's an opinion. And then what happens? Then what are you supposed to do?
Well, then it's important for you to decide what your opinion is. So you can hear their opinion and you can accept it and bring it into your energy, and which is you're telling all your cells that you want to follow whatever that guy says, follow. No questions, just do whatever that guy says. Or you can say, listen, that guy's brilliant. They've been trained at Harvard, whatever. However, it's my body. I get to choose what I want to do. And then start dreaming it. Start seeing. I mean, I say to people that have pancreatic cancer, go get a 30-year mortgage. And they're like, what?
Right.
I'm like, hey, go, get a new car, get a mortgage. Start planning your granddaughter's wedding. Start going out there and seeing yourself healthy and vibrant, and doing that all day long. And yeah, look at your diet and look at all these other things. But, to me, and I hear this all the time. I'm sure you've heard it, Molly, that people say cancer was one of the greatest gifts of my life because it got my attention.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of what cancer is. It's an attention getter. It's God's way of saying to you, hey, wake
Oh,
up.
it's a siren.
Right?
It's a siren.
And at that moment you get to make all kinds of choices, and there's no right or wrong. It's just, what do you want to do? Not what do they want to do.
I
What
love
do you
that.
want to do? And how are you going to do it? And yeah, you're going to get a lot of pressure from your friends and family and doctors to do all these treatments and do all that. And
Yeah, but that's their shit, right? Like that's their experience
well,
of losing you, right? That's their fear
yeah,
permeating you.
and it's also from the medical standpoint called, liability.
Right. It's also a cover your
I
ass
used I used to be
proposition.
in the I used to be in the HMO business. That was one of the businesses I was big time into, and we used to train our providers to always paint the worst possible scenario, because if you don't and it ends up that way, guess who's liable?
Right. Right.
And so you always give the worst case scenario, and then you can always look like a hero, or you can be right, and either one of those is a good ending for them.
Yeah, I think that and I love this idea of like there is an empowerment piece, like you're stepping into your power, which by the way, I think is also what we're like, I think there's a part of course, it was the voice of God inside of you on that beach. And I think we can always find like so many different philosophies talk about it. One of my therapy teachers, who's a Buddhist, she talks about it being like the wisdom inside, like that untapped resource, that wisdom. And it's like, we can always, I have a friend who just got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and I was doing a healing on her, and she looked at me and she said, I don't think I have rheumatoid arthritis. I said, like, okay, then maybe you don't. Like, what would life like, just all the stuff that I've learned, like, that's where I feel like you're a teacher to me. I said, okay, how about we act like you don't, and like start to, what would that make you feel like? She said, free. I said, well, that sounds like a better proposition,
Absolutely. Thank your body for being free. Thank your body for being healthy, and get on
Right.
with your life, right?
Well, you're a big guy about gratitude. So what do we know about that? Like, that's the other thing, right? Thank you, thank you, thank you. What do you like? Why do you make us do that? You terrible man. Why do you make us be so grateful, Rob?
Because it's love and gratitude are the two strongest healing. And so three, joy, love, and gratitude are the three most powerful healing energies you can find. And, and they're sometimes the hardest energies for us to find, right?
Yeah,
So,
believe it.
and you heard me say this a million times, but take my situation. My situation sucked. And however, I'm grateful for that, because look where I'm now. And I wouldn't be here had that not happened.
Right.
And even though it was horrible at the time and all that stuff, the truth is that I was being catapulted into a different place. And I had been ignoring it for so long that they needed to really kick my ass to get me into another place. So it could have been a cancer diagnosis, or it could have been whatever happened with me, but it's usually a, come
Right.
on. And we just have been trained to fall backwards and sink into the mire, instead of saying, no, okay, thank you. Thank you for that opinion. Thank you for that. Yeah, you're valued, training. You're an amazing guy. But however, I mean, and you've heard me tell the story about my stroke. I mean, that's classic.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You want to tell them? Because not everybody spends those. I spend a lot of time with you, for being honest. But tell it, what happened?
I mean, so I'm living in Santa Monica, and it's July 5th a year ago, and I'm taking my little dog out for a walk on the beach, and all of a sudden everything starts spinning in my head, and then all of a sudden my body literally starts spinning, walking around spinning, and then fall down and go boom. And I just thought I'd had too much coffee. It's like, you didn't drink
I do
enough
love a
water.
healer that tells us we can drink coffee, by the way.
And then I realized that I was in trouble, and I wasn't sure what it was. I just knew it wasn't good. And I ended up in the emergency room in UCLA Medical Center in Santa Monica. And after all these, they had to take an MRI three times and a CAT scan twice, because they couldn't get clear pictures of my head, which I thought was pretty funny. But when they finally did, they determined, and they showed me the whatever scan it was, that I had this big lesion in my brain. and I'd had a stroke. And they had a whole treatment plan for me, which included a lengthy hospital stay and an even longer rehabilitation hospital stay. And that I better just take a look at my life and clear the next 6 months.
Mm.
And this is the head neurologist for UCLA Medical Center telling me this.
Yeah.
And he's like, do you have any questions? And I said, no, I don't have any questions. I just want to tell you that I appreciate your knowledge and training and all of that. However, you're going to be back here later today and dismiss me from the hospital, not because you think I'm an asshole, but because you don't have to keep me here anymore. And he looked at me and said, oh, are you one of those spiritual people?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yeah, kind of. And he said, who's your physician? I said, I don't have a physician. He goes, that figures. But I have a naturopath. He's like, you need a real doctor. And I'm like, I have a real doctor. And he's like, well, we're going to run you through all these tests, and I'll be back later today and basically give you more bad news. And I said, I'll bet you $5 when you come back today, you're going to let me go. And he grunted like a angry buffalo and went out of the room, right? So they did all these tests, just like they said. And then at 5 o'clock, his number one assistant came in the room. And I said, hey, you're here to let me go, right? And she goes, yeah, as a matter of fact, there's no reason to keep you here. I said, where's your boss? He owes me $5. I mean, that's, I'm a smart ass. I can't help it. So
I love that. There's so many parts of you I love, and that is one of them.
But the truth is, I didn't, and this is my mind. This is the truth, Molly. What I was thinking was, I can't be sick. I can't be out. I have an immersion in 10 days.
Yep.
I have all these appointments. I have all these people that are waiting for me to help them. This is not acceptable. I'm not going to do this. And that was kind of my mind. I wasn't in my spiritual state meditating. I was like, no, I got things to do, right? And no, I'm not going to do this. And, I went home that day, and I didn't have any follow-up. I didn't do any physical. I mean, I had a little balance issues for a couple of days. That was it.
Well, you're human.
But, yeah.
But it's interesting what you're saying, though, which is most people, the minute that they say, listen, this is going to be a 6-month rough healing venture. Most people, because especially if it's the head of neurology at UCLA, are like, yeah, it is.
Yeah, I'm like, okay.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
And you're like, I reject that energy. I'm not interested.
I reject it. And
No,
because,
thank
because I had things to do, and I was like, no, that's not going to happen to me. So, I mean, and I know that part of that experience for me was for me to be able to share that story.
Yeah.
And, I've had people that said, well, how do you know you really had a stroke? Maybe you just fell down. Like, really, you want to see my, whatever. But
well, I remember once I was in some circle with you, and you had said that one of the only diseases that I really have a hard time healing is Alzheimer's, because the minute the brain gets wind that it has that, it just is like done. Do I remember that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, because, and that's that, or even cancer and Alzheimer's are kind of the same, because we are so aware of the steps, like Alzheimer's means, memory loss, dementia, blah, 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 blah. And so we were already programming ourselves to follow those exact steps. Same thing with cancer. It's like, okay, we're going to do chemo, then radiation, then this, and we're going to do chemo. And so we're already programming if we accept the diagnosis, we're buying into the sales pitch, right?
Right.
We're buying into it.
Well, the vision becomes that of a postage stamp, right?
And the body goes, okay. Because remember that our body is made up of cells that love us unconditionally. So there's no conditions. If we say, die, baby, they're going to go, okay.
But we all die, Rob, right?
But we don't have to suffer and die.
Okay. So we're aiming to just in our sleep go out.
Well, I mean, why not?
Oh, I'm here for it.
Right? Why not?
I used to not want to live too. And I'm joie de vivre, mostly joie de vivre with the side of ugh, but you know what I mean? Like, but yeah,
it's all about fear too. I mean, I'm one of those people that did not get a COVID shot. I've had COVID twice. And neither time was, I mean, it was just like, bleh, for a few days. But I'm building up my immune system. I used to say I'm in the endangered species age group, like vaccinate the old guy first.
Right.
And I'm like, no.
I mean, fairness, I had 3 of them and I had it forever. And I go to healing with you. I mean, that's what I think is hard for me to rectify. Like, sometimes I think it's purpose driven. I really learned a lot in the 6 months that I was so sick. I was going to healings with you. I really understand a lot of the lessons I was to learn. Like, I think that I wonder what this line between controlling my destiny and doing what my path is supposed to say. I think about a dear friend of mine who just died of cancer, and she was like in Peru doing I mean, she was hustling for it, and it took her. I guess that's the only part that really confuses me, is like, what's destiny and what's my hurting myself or me getting closed-minded.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And the way it was explained to me years ago by one of the beings that I was working with is they said, you look at your life as a big tree, really big tree with thousands of branches. And your destiny is to get to the top of the tree. But you have all these choices on how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so at any moment, you can go from branch to branch and go back down and come back up and do whatever you want, because you have free will. However, you have chosen the time and the place that you're going to die,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what's going to happen. And sometimes you can avoid it, and sometimes you can. But I'm like, what do you got to lose? Just go for it.
Well, that's what I think is the other. I had this boyfriend a long time ago, and I'm a real moon. I love a moon. You love a moon. I love a moon. And I would be like, oh, it's the full moon. And he's like, ugh, like, will you even believe in that? And I'm like, and he was like, obviously like a very skeptical, depressed person. I had a very broken picker at the time. And I would just look at him and be like, Mitchell, what's the downside? Like, what's the worst that happens?
Right.
That I believe this moon is going to remove some stuff that I don't want it. So that's like, and I guess I would love for you to speak to like skepticism a little bit. And then I must talk about livers and kidneys, but let's talk about
Well, I mean, I love skeptics because
God bless.
they're just so much fun. When I used to do live events all the time, there were always a half a dozen skeptics that came just to prove that I was a fraud.
Mm.
And so a lot of times what I would do is like, how many skeptics are there in a group? Raise your hand. And, there'd be a few. And I'm like, come on up here. You want to come up here? And I'm just like, so let's just see if you feel anything. And, even though they felt something or people could see it, they sometimes would agree that they felt something, sometimes they wouldn't. But, a skeptic to me is just another opportunity to give somebody a different outlook on life. And I don't, it's like, bring them. I used to be a skeptic. I never bought into this stuff.
I was the worst skeptic. I mean, but my skepticism was like, I don't know what you think about yours, but mine was just so rooted in fear. And I also think like unworthiness. Like, I didn't even believe that good things could happen to me. So I defaulted to, because that's whenever I do a hopeful podcast like ours, right? I just channel that kind of sick part of me being like, well, good for you guys. Way to overcome your stuff. Like, not me, not me. And I know, like, I spent enough time in your community where I think there are people like that too, that are fundamentally like not able, maybe not, hopefully not fundamentally, but not able to move out of this convinced that they can't get well. I see it in the comments of our retreats and stuff. I'm like, how do we help those people? Because I know there's a lot of people listening being like, I love Molly, but this shit's cray, but it's not. I just was like, what's the harm? What's the worst that happens? You feel better.
Well, what I say to people is, don't trust me or don't listen to what I say. Go on my website if you choose and read what other people write or watch the videos. I don't write those testimonials.
Go see the movie Heal. That's a good one.
See the movie Heal. I mean, just what do you got to lose? If what you're doing isn't working, why not go down another path? Try something else. If it's not working, why not? And, I always try to convert skeptics to
It's
The
so
real,
oddly scientific what you're saying though, Rob. You know what I mean? Like it's so like a
it is.
spiritual, that's actually the most scientific thing we could say, right? Which is that's what a scientist would do in a lab. They say, oh, this doesn't work. Let me go try something else. I think we've become so scared as people. And
Mhm.
I'll tell you, this show is about eating disorders and addictions in its own way. It's about whatever we decide we want to talk about. But I think that convincing comes on when you have so much diet trauma and so much failure and relapse that you just think, okay, this is my life. And you don't know if the 85th time you try something is going to be the thing. You kind of lose the will to try again.
Well, and the challenge with people is that we're up here all the time, and so
Up in our heads. We're on a
we're healing. Yeah,
podcast.
we're doing all of our healing in our head. I think if
Mm,
I do this, I think if I do that, if I take vitamin C, if I take vitamin D, if I go see Molly, if I do this, I do that. We're in our head and we're trying to figure out the next thing to fix it. When the reality is, if we have an eating disorder, it's probably buried in your kidneys, and it comes from an emotional event that happened at some point in some lifetime. And unless you remove that emotion, the energy from that emotional event, you're never going to change.
mm.
All you're going to do is rotate around. And so why not lose the emotional event? Even if you don't know what it is, you don't have to know what it is. Lose the emotional event that caused you to feel so afraid that you protected yourself by overeating or whatever you did.
Protected yourself by overeating.
Yeah.
Beautiful way to say it. You think addictions live in the kidneys? I thought you thought addictions lived in the liver
No,
and the
no, no, no. I'm
pancreas.
not saying, no, no, no.
Oh, no, I want to hear about all of this. This is what I came for.
We
I told
only,
you it's gonna be short, but we're already 40 minutes in. Sorry.
no, so, no, so the eating disorders typically are, so this is my opinion. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love your opinion. I'm here for it.
I'm not a doctor. I'm not telling you, this is based on what I've learned over the years, but
This is Rob Wergin's opinion.
this is my
Okay.
opinion.
Hmm.
And if you don't like it, that's fine,
That's
right?
okay. He don't take offense. He
But
loves you
what I
anyway.
know, what I know is that kidneys are where if our kidneys were in perfect condition, we would have strong self-worth, strong self-confidence, strong self-love,
Mm.
will, creativity, great sexuality, no arthritis, strong brain, strong heart, strong lungs. We'd be like fully abundant in every way. But when somebody tells you you're stupid or you're fat or they attack you or they hurt you and you turn to food to protect you, that's because you don't have self-confidence, you've lost your self-esteem, and you're afraid, which is kidneys.
Mm.
And so that energy cycles around in your kidneys. So
Sure.
to me, that's not as much of as an addiction. That's an affliction because you're protecting yourself.
Love that.
I mean, to me, and then the spleen actually is where most of our addictions come from. So if our addictions are there, our OCD, all that kind of stuff comes energetically. The seat of it is typically your spleen.
Mm.
And the spleen is where we hold disappointment and worry.
Mm.
So if your mother said to you, like mine did, I'm so disappointed in you, 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 it's like throwing disappointment mud balls at my spleen all day, and my body's constantly Googling my body to see what's going on, and my spleen saying to my brain, you're
You're not
worthless.
enough. You're not enough.
Not
You're
enough.
not enough. Yeah.
So that's kind of how that one works, right?
Yeah. What about our liver?
Liver is I like the word liver because it's got live in it, and
Ooh.
right, and it's the only organ in our body that if we take most of it out, it'll regenerate itself. So
True.
it's really a powerful organ, and it energetically is kind of I'm going to call it the manager of your body. It's talking to all the organs and all the body systems and trying to keep everybody in line and on schedule and all that kind of stuff. But the liver also holds on to stress, holds on to anger, holds on to rage. And so, do you want the manager of your body to be pissed off and stressed? Or do you
No.
want it to feel great, right? So, lots of things can come out of that. But so, skin issues or eye issues or digestive issues, energy issues, depression issues, all those things tend to start with liver energy.
Hmm.
And a lot of the immune system issues are liver, and the liver also controls the thyroid. So if you got thyroid stuff going on, it says to me your liver's out of whack. And so you can kind of, at least from my viewpoint, you can look at how the body shows up in an energetic kind of X-ray, clairvoyant kind of view. You can pretty much determine what's happened in a person's life based on how their organ systems look, because different organs hold different emotions,
Right.
and and a lot of that is from the past, so you have no idea where it came from, and so it's really hard to fix if you don't know where it came from.
Right.
So you can spend all this time talking about how I feel now, but if you don't go find the origin of the impact that came at you, it's always going to be there. It's always going to come cycling back. And so we want to go backwards in time in this work and pull that weed out.
And I think, listen, and I'm a talk therapist for a living, make this clear. Like, I also think talking about it, like there's a great little slogan, right? Analysis paralysis. Like sometimes I think talking about it doesn't make it better. And like, I think, you integrate a lot, you integrate breath work into your stuff, you integrate journaling, I think in a different time, you'd integrate movement and all that. Like it's held in your body. And what you're saying too, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is like, we have to get out of our brains and into our bodies a lot more and get in a different way connected. And I believe this wholeheartedly. Sometimes my brain's really out to get me.
If you think about it for a second, thought is energy, words are energy. Thinking about the same thing over and over and over is sending more of the same energy to the cells that are already overloaded with that same energy. And it's just, to me, making things worse because you're adding on. And it'd be a lot easier just to pop it out and be done with it.
And to those of you who are skeptics, this is literally a principle of behaviorism, right? What you're always reinforcing something. So if my dog's in his crate and he's barking and I'm saying, don't bark, don't bark, don't bark, I'm actually teaching him to bark.
Yeah.
Right. So if I'm sitting here saying like, I don't want to gain any weight, I just don't want to gain any weight. Like in a way, you're reinforcing that you're not going to gain weight, but you're reinforcing the wrong thing. This is what you've taught me, but this is also the study, like the years of master's degree study that I've done, which is you focus on the thing you want more of, not the thing that's happening.
Right.
Which is what you've taught me, which is good morning, cells. Hi, welcome.
Welcome.
Good morning. It's great to see y'all. It's a new day. Love you guys. What do y'all want to do today on a good day? Usually I'm like, oh, this day again.
Oh, we're human, right?
Well, I don't know. Then you taught me to like scrub my chakras and I try to do that a little bit and try to find some gratitude, just trying to make it work.
That's what I call it work.
It's great. I mean, and so where can we find you? I mean, you can, if you want to find me, it's wherever Rob Wergin is, but where can others, what do you think? Like, I have an idea, but what do you think? Like, what's a good introduction to Rob?
Well, I would just invite people to go to my website, which is robwergin.com.
Okay. And I invite people, if you have $27 to come on a Tuesday night at 6, all you do is lay there. He doesn't even make you do anything. Just lay there and listen to music. If you're like intrigued, go to his website. We have to teach you how to sell yourself another day. I'll come over and help you.
All right. Well,
but I think,
and if they go to the website's going to encourage them to do just that.
Good. $27. Just lay there on a Tuesday night. What's the worst that happens?
Right. Yeah. I say to people, the worst that'll happen is you'll feel better.
Right. The worst that happens if you get everything you want. Well, I love you, friend. I love you, teacher. I love you, healer. I love you, all things. Thank you for existing. And thanks for coming on the show.
Where's your puppy dog? Is he?
No, he's not available for podcast today. He was a little too crazy for it. I think he knew you were coming over. You're like his being. He's like, oh, that guy. Though he was in the healing last night, he passed out. Done. Thank you for whatever work you did on him.
That was a good one last night.
That was amazing.
Tonight's going to be even better. So,
well, I signed up for it. So last minute, but here we are. Thank you. I love you.
Love you too.